Are you lying in bed right now? Perhaps with one leg resting over the other, while your phone is just inches away from your face and your thumb is already preparing to scroll past this video like hundreds of others? If so, wait. Don't scroll away just yet, because there's a very high chance that this video is talking directly about you. And I don't mean that in a kind of relatable way, but rather in the exact kind of way that makes you go completely quiet for a few seconds because you suddenly feel exposed. This is especially true if it's already late. Your eyes are starting to burn and your mind feels utterly exhausted, but you still don't want to sleep. In these moments, you keep telling yourself, just a few more minutes, or one more video, and I'll sleep right after this. But deep down inside, you already know what's going to happen next, as those 5 minutes quickly turn into 30, then into an hour, and eventually, another entire night disappears without you even noticing. And the scary part is that most people never realize the exact moment when staying up late stops being just a simple habit and slowly becomes the very way they live, the way they escape life, and sometimes the only place where they finally feel at peace. Maybe you too have become a night owl just like Cole, someone who naturally feels more awake when the rest of the world is asleep, someone who thinks more when everything gets quiet, and someone who constantly struggles to put the phone down even when his eyes are already burning. He is the kind of person who constantly promises himself, "Tonight I'm going to sleep early," but somehow he still ends up staring at the ceiling near sunrise with a brain that acts like it has never even heard the word rest. And yet, the strangest part is that most people who stay up late don't actually love the night itself. Instead, what they really love is the feeling of finally not being needed by the world anymore. At this hour, there are no deadlines, no messages, no expectations, and absolutely no pressure to reply or to become the version of yourself that everyone else wants you to be. There is only silence, the soft glow of the screen light, and the heavy thoughts you spend the entire day trying to outrun. Think about it. Every single night, Cole stares at the clock in the dark, watching it hit 4:37 a.m. For him, 4:37 is a number that has become terrifyingly familiar, and in that exact moment, a familiar wave of panic hits him all over again. He realizes he has less than 2 hours before he has to wake up, but his mind still stubbornly refuses to shut off. The room around him is completely silent, but outside the window, the sky is slowly getting brighter and the first birds begin to sing. And for people who stay up late, that is always the scariest moment of all. The exact moment they realize they have stayed awake all night again. Yet nobody truly knows that every single night, Cole is fighting an exhausting war against his own mind. And what's worse is that the most exhausting part isn't even the lack of sleep itself. It's the painful fact that he knows exactly what this is doing to him, and yet he still repeats it every single night. Maybe people who stay up late aren't addicted to the night. Maybe they're addicted to the feeling of finally existing without the world pulling on them anymore. When you look back, this destructive cycle rarely ever starts randomly. It usually begins the very first time someone has far too many thoughts trapped inside their head, which often traces back to the teenage years. This is the stage of life where music suddenly starts hitting much deeper. Emotions become significantly more complicated, and the nighttime begins to feel strangely different from the day. Because of this, some people slowly get used to staying awake while listening to music, overthinking their life, texting until sunrise, or simply just not wanting to sleep. To them, the daytime feels too loud because there are many voices and too many things demanding immediate reactions. But at night, for the very first time in the day, they finally feel like they can hear their own thoughts clearly. And that is exactly where it begins, slowly, quietly, and harmlessly, until eventually, staying up late becomes an emotional hiding place that they don't even realize they've become completely dependent on. Teenagers don't just stay awake because they're energetic. They stay awake because their inner world has finally become louder. But have you ever stopped to wonder whether people stay up late this much because of who they are as individuals, or because they live in a world where the brain is almost never allowed to rest anymore? To understand this, think about something simple. If right now the power suddenly went out, the Wi-Fi completely disappeared, your phone died, and all of social media vanished for just one night, what would actually happen? Would people still willingly stay awake until 3 or 4 a.m.? Or would most people in reality go to sleep much earlier? The truth is, many people don't stay awake only because of their internal thoughts. They stay awake because the screen never ends, the dopamine never stops, and there's always one more video waiting right behind the next swipe. Years ago, when nighttime arrived, everything in the world slowly became quiet, meaning people eventually ran out of things to do, and the brain finally had a natural chance to slow down. But now, every single phone feels like an endless door that never closes. Because of technology, you can watch videos until sunrise, scroll TikTok forever, read drama online, watch live streams, text people, play games, or keep feeding your brain dopamine without ever truly feeling like the night is over. And the scariest part about all of this is that technology didn't just steal people's sleep. It actually trained the human brain to constantly expect stimulation. That's exactly why so many people today can't even tolerate a few minutes of silence anymore. Just a few moments without their phone, and suddenly they feel empty, restless, and deeply uncomfortable, leaving them forced to pick it back up again. Cole is the exact same way, because on some nights, he opens his phone not because he actually wants to watch anything, but simply because he can't stand being alone with his own thoughts. And maybe that is the most terrifying part of all. Not that technology keeps people awake, but that people have become completely dependent on noise just to avoid facing themselves in silence. This dependency becomes even worse between 18 to 30 years old, which is usually when people stay up the latest, and coincidentally, it is also when life starts feeling the heaviest. This is the time of school, work, money, the future, relationships, the immense pressure to succeed, the pressure to prove yourself, and the constant fear of needing to become someone before it's too late. During the day, absolutely everyone wants a piece of your energy, whether it's through messages, deadlines, phone calls, other people's emotions, family expectations, or society's general pressure. And then, finally, nighttime arrives, and at last, nobody needs anything from you anymore. Even though Cole knows he should sleep, and he knows tomorrow is going to feel absolutely horrible, and he even knows he's slowly destroying himself, he keeps scrolling anyway, moving from one video after another. It's almost as if he feels that as long as there is enough background noise, he won't have to face himself. In fact, some people stay awake until sunrise not because they still have physical energy, but simply because they are not ready to face tomorrow yet. They hesitate because sleeping means tomorrow officially arrives. The pressure immediately comes back, and they will have to survive another exhausting day all over again. Sometimes people stay awake because sleeping means tomorrow arrives faster. And so, slowly but surely, the night becomes the only place left that feels genuinely familiar, safe, and emotionally quiet. The night slowly becomes the only place that feels emotionally familiar. As a result, the night slowly disappears inside these familiar, repetitive routines of TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram, going through one video after another. Some people open their phone at 11 p.m., fully planning to watch for just a few minutes, but then they blink once, and suddenly the sun is already coming up. Other people open YouTube just to play some background music before sleeping. Yet 2 hours later, they are somehow still awake, watching videos about deep space, psychology, or abandoned cities at 4 in the morning. And the funny part is that they don't even remember the last video they watched, but they keep scrolling anyway, acting like if they stop, every single suppressed thought will immediately come rushing back. And honestly, some of you watching this video right now are probably doing the exact same thing. You are doing it not because you're entertained, but because you desperately need something loud enough to drown out the lingering thoughts in your head. To cope, some people replay the same song every single night, not because the song is amazing, but because it makes the dark room feel slightly less lonely. Others choose to reread old messages, replay conversations that ended years ago, or look through old photos like they're trying to find a past version of themselves that disappeared a long time ago. And sometimes they just stare blankly at the ceiling in the dark, with no music and no videos, doing absolutely nothing but letting the brain keep talking to itself. By 3:52 a.m., their eyes start burning and their body feels completely exhausted, but their mind just keeps running. And the worst part of it all is that they know exactly what this is doing to them. They know they're destroying their body. They know tomorrow is going to feel awful, and they know they'll wake up exhausted again. And yet, every single night, the cycle repeats itself in exactly the same way. And what makes this even more dangerous? Most people don't realize it's slowly changing them until years have already passed. The world gets quieter at night, and that's when the mind gets louder. Because of this constant struggle, there's one specific sentence that almost every single night owl has said before. Tonight, I'm going to sleep early. Following that promise, they get into bed, put the phone down, and close their eyes. But after just 2 minutes of silence, suddenly, their brain starts waking up all over again, whispering, "Let me check my phone real quick." Or, "One more video, and I'll sleep right after this." And then, inevitably, they pick the phone back up, put it down, and then pick it back up again. Cole does the exact same thing, to the point where some nights he turns his phone off 5 different times, but just a few minutes later, he's holding it again without even realizing he picked it up. And the strange thing is that the harder people try to force themselves to sleep early, the later they often end up staying awake, simply because sleep itself has become another stressful form of pressure. But the strangest part about this whole phenomenon is that almost everyone who stays up late already knows that this lifestyle is actively destroying them. They are fully aware that their body is exhausted, their mental health is declining, their emotions are becoming numb, and their life is slowly falling out of balance. And yet, despite all this knowledge, every single night, the cycle repeats itself again. This happens not because they're lazy and not because they lack discipline, but because staying up late eventually stops being just a habit and becomes a hiding place, an emotional break, and the only true freedom they still feel after an entire day of being drained by life. That's exactly why many people aren't actually addicted to their physical phone. What they're truly addicted to is the feeling of escaping reality for just a few more hours. And that is also why common advice like just sleep earlier, put the phone down, or be more disciplined usually doesn't work for very long. It fails because the real problem isn't the phone itself. The real problem is that they don't want the daytime to end while they are still feeling the way they currently feel inside. And this is why most people fail when they try to fix their sleep schedule. Therefore, if someone truly wants to stop staying up so late, the first thing they absolutely need to understand is this: you cannot force a tired brain to sleep, especially a brain that has spent years overthinking, doom scrolling, and surviving on nighttime dopamine. Of course, some people try exercising in the evening, reducing their caffeine intake, putting the phone away earlier, or creating better nighttime routines. And yes, those things do genuinely help, but the problem is that not everyone has the time, the energy, or the emotional stability to stay consistent with them every day. So, Instead of trying to completely change your life overnight, you have to start smaller. First, stop trying to fix your sleep in one night. The more you pressure yourself with the thought of, "I have to sleep early tonight," the more your brain turns sleep into another stressful task on your to-do list. Therefore, instead of forcing yourself to sleep immediately, try simply lowering the lights, reducing stimulation, reducing noise, and giving your brain the time it needs to cool down naturally. Second, don't let your phone be the last thing your brain sees every night. Think about how many people scroll TikTok until the exact second they fall asleep, and then wake up and immediately grab their phone again. This routine means the brain never truly gets to rest. Now, maybe you can't quit your phone entirely overnight, and that's okay. But at the very least, try giving your mind just a few quiet minutes before sleep, without endless scrolling, without constant videos, and without nonstop dopamine. At first, this silence will admittedly feel uncomfortable, because the moment silence appears, your thoughts will naturally begin rising to the surface again. But you must remember that this is also the exact moment your brain slowly starts relearning how to rest. Third, you have to build a life you don't constantly want to escape from, because when you look at it deeply, this is the real root of the entire problem. Many people don't stay awake because they love the night. They stay awake because they feel emotionally exhausted by the daytime. When someone spends too long living under constant pressure, feeling lonely, remaining emotionally drained, or feeling trapped inside a life they constantly want to escape, the nighttime naturally becomes their only emotional hiding place. The truth is, you simply cannot heal chronic late nights if your daytime life is still actively destroying your peace. People don't always stay awake because they hate sleeping. Sometimes they stay awake because they hate the life waiting for them tomorrow. Finally, stop expecting yourself to become a perfect person overnight. Consider the fact that some people stay up late for consecutive years, but then suddenly expect themselves to completely transform their habits in just a few days. Then, when they inevitably fail, they start hating themselves even more. But the human body doesn't heal that fast, and neither does the mind. If tonight you manage to sleep just 20 minutes earlier, you need to recognize that that's still progress. If tonight you put your phone down slightly earlier, that is still progress. Because escaping a destructive cycle that has lasted for years was never going to be a battle won in one single night. In the end, maybe people who stay up late never truly loved the night itself. What they actually loved was the feeling of silence, the feeling of freedom, and the comfort of finally not being emotionally needed by the world for a few hours. But the truth is, you shouldn't have to destroy your own body just to feel alive. And maybe the scariest part of this reality isn't that someone sleeps too late, but rather that they slowly forget what it feels like to actually look forward to tomorrow. They are left with no excitement, no motivation, and no real desire to wake up and begin another day. And maybe the saddest part of all is that some people have stayed awake for so many years that they no longer even know whether they're resting, or if they are just slowly disappearing from their own life. As the final hours of the night slip away, Cole looks outside the window and sees that the sky is fully bright now. With a heavy sigh, he closes the curtains again, just like he does every other morning. And maybe the most terrifying part of all is that one day you stop staying awake because you love the night, and you start staying awake simply because you no longer know how to live during the daytime. The night is dangerous for overthinkers because silence gives thoughts a voice. And maybe the saddest part is that some people have stayed awake for so many years, they no longer know whether they're resting or slowly disappearing.